Her so-called best friend couldn't resist taking a jab at me during dinner. He leaned back in his chair, smirked and said, "She could definitely do better than you." I didn't let it slide. I shut him down right there in front of everyone. That's when Claire snapped, glaring at me like I was the problem. "Apologize or we're done." I just smiled. I didn't bother saying a single word. But weeks later, when she came home to a very different reality, she finally learned what the word done really meant. For 3 years, things with Claire had been good, honestly better than good. I'm a lawyer, which means I spend my days knee-deep in the worst parts of human behavior. Coming home to her felt like stepping into fresh air after being trapped underground all day. Claire was sharp, quick-witted, working as a paralegal. She had big dreams too, law school, a career, a name for herself. That drive she carried lit me up. I admired her for it, loved it even. Together, we were building something real in the house I had spent years restoring with my own hands. It wasn't just a roof over our heads. It felt like solid ground under our future. I wasn't simply paying bills for a girlfriend. I was investing in the woman I believed I'd marry. But even in the middle of all that, there was always this faint background noise, this low buzz that I couldn't ignore. That noise had a name, Marcus. Marcus was Claire's best friend from college. He worked as a graphic designer, though you'd think he was Picasso the way he carried himself. In his eyes, a 9-to-5 job was a prison sentence. Meanwhile, reality looked a little different. He was cranking out taco shop menus just to keep a roof over his head. Claire swore up and down that Marcus was her ride or die, her so-called platonic soulmate, the guy who always had her back. To me, he was a parasite with a god complex, a guy who seemed to dedicate his life to undermining mine. I'll give him this, he was slick about it. Never anything blatant. Just sly comments, little jabs wrapped up as jokes or backhanded compliments. His favorite weapon? Claire's ex, Ryan, the musician who had broken her heart. I'd take Claire on a nice trip to Mexico, and sure enough, Marcus would swoop in with some wistful story about a random camping trip they'd gone on years ago. "Remember that, Claire?" He'd sigh, like he was narrating a movie. You can't plan memories like that. You've got to be with someone who understands your free spirit. The message was always crystal clear. I was the dull, predictable choice, while he was the keeper of her wild, adventurous side. And Claire? She ate it up. Every spoonful. She bought into his protective best friend act like it was gospel. Anytime I even hinted that his behavior was out of line, she'd come back swinging in his defense. "He's just being Marcus," she'd say. "He was there when Ryan shattered me. He's just worried. He's family, Daniel. I'm a patient man. I have to be, given my job. Lawyers don't jump at the first scrap of evidence. We wait. We let the other side keep talking until they bury themselves in their own words. We wait for them to hand us the rope. And I waited for Marcus to hand me that rope. That moment finally came about a month ago. I had just finished the biggest case of my career. 6 brutal months of long nights, weekends gone, coffee by the gallon. But we won. It was a career-defining victory, not just for me, but for my entire firm. So, to celebrate, I threw a dinner party. I invited my closest friends, the people I'd practically vanished on during that case. And because I was still trying to play the good guy, I told Claire she could bring her friends too. Which, of course, meant Marcus had a seat at my table. The night started off perfect. The house buzzed with laughter. The expensive wine I'd been saving was finally open. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. Naturally, Marcus treated my home like it was his stage. He soaked up the free booze and decided the spotlight belonged to him. A few glasses in, he launched into some long-winded monologue about art exhibits and how true creators see the world differently than suits. He glanced at me when he said it, made sure everyone caught the jab. "Some of us are driven by passion," he declared, "while others are just practical." He took a slow sip of my wine, savoring it like he owned the bottle. My friends exchanged looks that could have curdled milk, but I just kept a tight smile and let him talk. But he couldn't stop himself. He leaned closer to Claire, putting on that fake concerned friend act. "I just want you to be happy, Claire," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Daniel's a good guy, sure. He's stable, reliable, provider." He spat out the word reliable like it was filth in his mouth. Then he turned, locked eyes with me, and let this smug little smirk spread across his face. "But let's be honest, you could do way better than him." And there it was. The rope I'd been waiting for. The whole table froze. You could have heard a pin drop. My friends looked like they were about 2 seconds from jumping across the table. Claire? She just stared down at her plate, cheeks burning. Not from anger at him, but from embarrassment at the scene he caused. That was the moment it all clicked for me. The patient-lawyer act ended right then. What stepped in wasn't the host, wasn't the nice guy. It was the man who had just been insulted in his own home, in front of his own people, by a freeloader drinking his wine. I set my fork and knife down carefully, folded my hands, and fixed my eyes on Marcus. The host had left the room. The prosecutor had just stepped up to the stand. "That's a bold statement, Marcus," I said, my voice low but sharp. "Why don't you explain it for us? In your expert opinion, what exactly does a better man for Claire look like? Be specific. Lay it out for me." Marcus wasn't ready for that. He had prepped for yelling, not for cross-examination. He stumbled. Well, someone more on her level. Someone creative. Someone who gets her." "I see," I said, nodding slowly. "So creativity is the main requirement. Interesting theory. And I assume you believe you fit that mold." "I think I understand her better than anyone," he said, puffing himself up like a rooster. "Perfect," I said, leaning back. "So you're the gold standard. Let's test that. Let's look at more than just vibes. Let's look at what you actually bring to the table. Let's talk about investment." I turned to the group. "Everyone here knows Claire's in her second year of law school. Top-tier program, top-tier tuition. I cover every dollar of it. That's not just a financial commitment, it's faith. Faith in her and in our future." Then I looked him square in the eye. "So tell me, Marcus, as the self-proclaimed gold standard for Claire, what exactly have you invested in her future lately? Besides your constant criticisms of me?" His face drained of color. Claire's eyes went wide, and she whispered, "Daniel, please, don't." I held up a hand without breaking eye contact with him. "Not yet. I'm not finished. Let's move on. The car she drives, it's dependable, safe. I bought it so she could get to school without worry. Now, you've got that little convertible, right? The one that spends more time in the shop than on the road? Claire's had to bail you out with repair money 3 times in just the last 6 months. Hasn't she? Money she pulled from our joint account, which, just to remind you, is funded entirely by me. So, in reality, Marcus, not only am I investing in Claire's future, I'm also paying to keep your hipster toy on the road. You're welcome." One of my buddies actually snorted before covering it with a cough. Marcus looked like he'd been hit with a brick. "And finally," I said, leaning forward, my tone turning razor sharp, "let's talk about the house, the roof over her head." I paused, let the silence hang. "I own it. I cover the mortgage. I fix what breaks. Meanwhile, you can't even pay your rent on time, and Claire's had to step in more than once, with money that, again, I earned. So let me just make sure I've got your argument straight, for the jury. Well, in this case, for the table." I leaned forward, eyes locked on him. "You're saying that a man who provides a stable home, a dependable car, and full tuition for a top-tier education is somehow the wrong choice for Claire. And according to you, the better option is a guy who can't even support himself, who bleeds her dry, and who repays her generosity by doing everything he can to poison her relationship, out of what can only be described as a pathetic, transparent, borderline creepy obsession. Did I capture that correctly, Marcus?" I leaned back in my chair, letting the words hang in the air like the final lines of a closing argument. The case was wrapped. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus wasn't a man anymore. He was a shredded witness, torn apart on the stand. He sat slumped in his chair, humiliated, beaten, unable to find words. Around the table, my friends stared at him with open disgust. Then my eyes went to Claire. Her face was chaos. Shock, embarrassment, and something else swirling together. But the emotion that finally broke through wasn't relief. It wasn't even gratitude. It was anger. Pure, blistering, white-hot fury. She shoved her chair back so hard the legs screeched across the floor. Her whole body trembled. "I cannot believe you just did that," she spat. "You humiliated him in front of everyone." "He humiliated himself, Claire," I said, my voice heavy, drained. "I only laid out the evidence." Her eyes blazed as she turned fully on me. "Apologize to him. Right now. Apologize to my best friend, or we are finished." And just like that, there it was, the ultimatum. The final piece of evidence. She wasn't protecting me, her partner of 3 years. She was defending him, choosing him. Whatever love I had for her didn't fade slowly. It was executed on the spot. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I thought she was, not the partner I believed in, but the reality standing in front of me. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled small, sad, final. Then I stood up, glass in hand, and walked out of the dining room. The trial was over. The verdict delivered. The fallout came quick. Claire stormed out that night with Marcus in tow, running on rage and humiliation. She moved in with him immediately, like throwing gasoline on an already burning fire. She thought she'd won some kind of battle, that I'd come crawling back, desperate to fix what had broken. She didn't realize I'd accepted her terms right there at the table. For 2 solid weeks, I went dark. No calls, no texts, no replies to the barrage of messages that shifted from furious to desperate. Friends she sent to mediate got nothing from me. I wasn't sulking, I was gone. A ghost. And while she flailed, I got to work. The house that once felt like ours now felt contaminated, like a crime scene. So I treated it like one. I spent an entire weekend boxing up every last one of her belongings. Not in anger, methodically, like an executor settling the estate of a relationship that was officially dead. Once everything was stacked neatly in the spare room, I changed the locks, reset the security system, and made 2 phone calls I didn't enjoy but knew had to be made. The first was to the dean of admissions at her law school. I had built a strong relationship there through alumni work, so he took my call. I calmly explained that my personal circumstances had changed permanently, and the private scholarship fund I'd set up for Claire's tuition was being dissolved, effective immediately. The second was to the managing partner at my firm. I had gone out on a limb to secure her a coveted summer internship, a position that could have launched her career. I explained that, due to a serious and unresolvable personal conflict, the offer had to be rescinded. I didn't make those calls for revenge. I made them because every ounce of support I gave her was based on partnership. She had shattered that foundation with her ultimatum. My support died with it. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door. The camera caught her fumbling with her key, her frustration turning to panic when it didn't work. Finally, she rang the bell. I opened the door but kept the chain on. She looked nothing like the woman who stormed out of my dining room. She looked wrecked. The anger was gone, replaced with desperation. Life with Marcus, the starving artist, had clearly been harsher than she imagined. "Daniel, we need to talk," she said, her voice thin. "No, Claire, we don't," I told her flatly. "You already made your choice. Conversation's over." Tears welled in her eyes. "You can't throw away 3 years over one fight." "It wasn't a fight," I said, calm as stone. "It was the truth. You stood at that table and demanded I apologize to the man who spent years trying to undermine us. You defended the parasite over your partner. That wasn't anger, Claire, that was a decision. And decisions have consequences." Her panic sharpened as she realized I wasn't bending. "But what about everything we planned? Law school, the internship?" "Yes," I said slowly. "About that. The tuition for your last semester is due soon. Isn't it? I hope you and Marcus have it covered, because my investment ended the night you chose him." Her face went pale. "What?" she whispered. "And the internship," I pressed. "That offer's gone. My firm doesn't tolerate conflicts of interest." She stumbled back like I'd struck her. That internship was her golden ticket, and she knew it was gone. "You can't do that," she begged. "Please, Daniel, you can't." I shook my head. "I already have. You gave me a choice, apologize or we're done. I chose done. And now you get the fallout. Go to Marcus. Surely the man you swore was better than me has a plan to cover your $50,000 tuition and the career you just lost." Then I closed the door on her tear-streaked face. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel grief. I just felt quiet. The trial was finished. The aftermath played out exactly as expected. She dropped out of law school just shy of graduating. The dream she clung to was dead. She stayed with Marcus. From what friends tell me, their life together is hell. She resents him for what he cost her, and he's stuck with a woman who reminds him daily of his own failures. Sure, he won. He got the girl, but what he got was a broken version of her, one he'll never be able to fix. And me? I didn't do any of this for revenge. I did it because loyalty is the foundation of a relationship, and once she destroyed that, everything else collapsed. My actions weren't about punishment, they were about enforcing the terms. She wanted to know what done really meant. Now she knows. It means the support stops, the investment ends, and the builder walks away, leaving behind the ruins of the house you decided to burn.